Hello everyone and thank you for joining me. Today I will be using a pretty unique fountain pen from Platinum. Pretty unique and maybe a little bit over-engineered in my opinion, maybe. What I do appreciate is the fact that Platinum went through the trouble and engineered their own mechanism for the capless design instead of doing what others have done and copy the Pilot design once their patent has expired. To begin with, the fountain pen can be operated with one hand, even though the knock or the truss tube might be a little bit too long to operate with one hand for those with hands on the smaller size. However, the operation is pretty smooth even though midway you can feel a little bit of a step as you press or depress it. To fill it up, just like Pilot, you have to open the barrel and remove the inner core, but unfortunately it doesn't stop there. There is another sleeve that you need to remove by twisting it before you can replace your cartridge or refill the converter by putting it inside a bottle. If you're refilling the converter, you don't necessarily need to remove the sleeve unless you want to see the ink levels. Speaking of converter, it is not included in the package, and if you do plan to use one, the only style you can use is the one that you see, the rounded off one. The other square one will not work with the mechanism. So it is a little bit fiddly to fill it or change cartridges in it. The other complication and inconvenience that you might find on the fountain pen is the clip and the chin. That is needed to be part of the design because of how the mechanism is designed. This limits a little bit on how you hold the fountain pen and might not be ideal for a lot of people. In all fairness, the clip can be removed and it does come with a tool to remove it, but unfortunately there are 3 knobs that remain behind. One larger that guides the clip in place and 2 smaller ones on the side of the fountain pen that clips the clip in place. I have seen people filing these down, but that is not a reversible change and it will hurt the resale value for sure. But if you don't plan to sell it and you plan to keep it forever, I guess that will be one way to fix the problem. So a very interesting fountain pen for sure, but with a lot of more inconveniences than the original Pilot Capless design. And not to mention the fact that at the beginning some of the models had issues with the feed breaking or cracking because of how the nib was crimped on it. It seems that they fixed the issue in newer releases though, however, I guess you wouldn't know on the market which one is the newer version and which one is the older version. So there is some caution in there. Anyway, let's try and fill it up and see how it writes. For today's ink, I will be using a Pilot ink, specifically the Yama-Guri. Filling it up was no issue at all, other than, well, the fact that I had to strip the fountain pen down basically. Like I mentioned, you don't have to remove the last sleeve if you don't care to see the ink levels and make sure you have a full converter. I did because I wanted to make sure it is full. Then, well, reassemble and you're good to go. The fountain pen started writing without any issues. The nib on this specific one that I have is an extra fine nib, and as such, in true Japanese fashion, the nib is really a needle point almost. Feels like it has a specific sweet spot where it works the best, but as soon as you turn it, it starts to be a little bit scratchy. It still works, but if you are not careful and you press a little bit too hard, it can dig a little bit into the paper. It works pretty good on both sides, with reverse being slightly a little bit thinner or maybe just a little bit drier. It's a little more difficult to hold it on reverse, but I noticed that if I grab it from lower on the section, my fingers clears all the obstructions pretty well actually. So no real issues with the writing, quite nice and wet for an extra fine nib, and I think I will probably enjoy it for the scribble part. In an odd way, it feels a lot like an isograph mechanical pen, to be honest. I was unsure how to write with it actually, and my letters turned out a little bit squiggly. As such, because of the design and how it feels, There is no line variation. The nib is pretty stiff as far as I can tell. I don't know if other sizes will be better, but this one, it's stiff as an L, literally. This in theory should be perfectly suited for drawing. Speaking of drawing, let's just do that and see what abomination we will be getting today. Well, the scribble for today turned out actually pretty interesting. I can tell that I really like the nib that I used because of how I took my time with the drawing and how slowly I was progressing through it. I wasn't sure again what to start with. I didn't have really anything specific in mind. So at the beginning I kind of started to work some small areas and just go a little bit around, see if I can find maybe a shape that I like. And eventually something kind of started to take shape. I kind of see again an eye with some 40 eyeballs, I guess. And then a beak came along, and obviously that kind of told me that, well, I guess I will be drawing some sort of a bird, a chicken, a weird thing. Again, bottom part, wasn't sure where to go with it. I thought that maybe I'll have like a big chest area and then very tiny legs that it sits on somewhere at the bottom. But then as I was doing and splitting the lines, trying to do the chest area, I realized that probably it's better to have two legs. So I end up actually having two very long legs with a very tiny chest. Again, very awkward legs like I usually like to do them. And I don't know, things kind of evolve slowly from there, building up the shape, shading it and all that. Definitely a unique kind of a chicken, I guess. The beak is weird, the eyes is weird, everything it's obviously exaggerated. And I don't know. I don't know what it is. He has three little weird things coming out of its head. Obviously he has two big bulbous eyes with some fur, or I guess fur, or whatever you want to call it, around the eyes. And he has a tail, like a rooster tail maybe, kind of or maybe like a horse tail. He looks weird. I mean, I like the way the lines blend into each other and how they work and how they're fluid and organic, but maybe it's not really an actual chicken, or at least not a normal chicken, I guess, or bird, or whatever, I don't know. And obviously there's a little bit of ground with some little kind of plants, or maybe something far in the background, or they're very close to it, because this thing is gigantic. I don't know, scale-wise, how big it will be, but it definitely occupies the page. The funny part is I tried to keep the sides of the drawing as clean as possible, since I basically started doing the shop part on my channel, and I started to add the drawings as, you know, items to buy if people are interested, or better to say, to buy prints out of them. I started to pay more attention to the surroundings of the drawing. I noticed that depending on the sizes that I have, my drawings that don't fit properly in that printed area, and a lot of times I have to crop the design so you don't get the whole thing. But if I leave a lot of space around that, I can basically play around with that and kind of make it fit. So I think my drawings, for whatever reason, are gonna start to be, well, not for whatever reasons, my drawings most probably will start to be influenced by that. Anyway, going back to the drawing, I really enjoyed this one. I like these lines when they kind of sort of go into an organic form and flow, and they basically eventually build something. I like this kind of drawings. You'll probably see more of this from me. Well, I guess most of my drawings are kind of like that, but more on this approach, I don't know. I have a few ideas that I want to try, that were triggered by this specific drawing. I especially want to work more on the eyes. I think they're okay, but I don't know, they feel maybe a little bit odd. I don't know if they connect with my characters that well. I do like the color. I think I'm gonna keep on using the color pencils, maybe just get better at it. I'll be honest with you, I'm mostly like a dual tone guy. I never really use colors, at least not to this extent. So this is kind of a beginning of experimentation for me, and one of the reasons why I've been using colors a lot to hopefully eventually, I don't know, reach somewhere and learn something along the way. Haven't looked at tutorials. I don't want to look at tutorials. I just want to discover it by myself and maybe hopefully bring it in a different direction rather than follow something that is already there. You know, playing around and discovering things for yourself. So yeah, the only color that I used today was for the eye. I made it like a yellow goldish eye. I guess kind of a chicken, yellow chicken, even though they don't have yellow eyes, but I don't know, don't ask. I just did it like that. And I really wanted to use pencil, but I thought that the drawing would become a little bit too busy. So I give up on it, at least for this drawing, for today's drawing. Maybe I'll bring it up next time. I don't know, depending on what I'm gonna do. Eventually though, cool kind of level of drawing. I really enjoyed it. And speaking of the drawing, well, putting the drawing aside and just going to the fountain pen, I have mixed feelings about it. I liked it, I enjoyed it using it, but not as much as I might have hoped. Now my fingers, I managed to work around those obstructions, especially the ones from the clip, when holding it a little bit higher. But I find it maybe a little bit thick, maybe, I'm not sure. My middle finger on how the fountain pen was resting on it was hurting a little bit, and I did find it, well, troublesome a little bit when I was trying to use it on reverse. And obviously, as a fun thing, I mostly used it on reverse, or at least it was like a 50-50 situation, or maybe more like 70-30, and 70 being mostly on reversed. And I used it on reverse because, again, the knee, while was extra fine, was actually very wet. And when I was trying to do like very fine lines, the lines were kind of merging into each other and making a blob out of it. So I ended up actually using it on reverse mostly in order to get those finer details in the drawing. And then when I wanted to build up more darker areas, then I just use it on the normal side. So, mixed feelings. I like it. I definitely like it. And I don't know. I need to use it more. It is the first time I'm using it, even though I had it in my collection for like a year and a half now or something like that. Anyway, bottom line, I guess in the end, I do like the fountain pen, but I find it hard to recommend it because of how it is built. This is one of those fountain pens that you need to experience it for yourself before deciding if you like it or not. So either buy one from a place where you know you can return it after trying it, like, I don't know, Amazon, or even better, go in person to a store and try it out. The only problem with going in person to a store is that you don't get to hold it for too long. So a minute or two while you get to hold it might not be enough to truly get a feeling out of it. I would say maybe spend like a couple of hours with it before deciding if you want it or not. Anyway, so great fountain pen, I think. I like the mechanism, makes it. I like things that are over-engineered because they make them kind of cool, and you get to play with them and you get to disassemble them and be wowed by all the mechanisms inside of it. But in the end, it is a fountain pen that you're supposed to use, so I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. With that said, thank you for joining me, and I'll hopefully see you next week. Wish you all the best and a wonderful day or night, wherever you are. Take care. Bye!